All right, we're following breaking news out of Atlanta where an individual had rammed a vehicle into the gate of the field office of the FBI there in an attempt to gain entry this afternoon. We know at this point that bomb technicians have cleared the vehicle that rammed that gate, and the suspect is in police custody with the DeKalb County Police. Let's get now to Evan Perez for the very latest on what we know. We can see in these pictures coming to us, we see a vehicle that has gone through the gate, stopped obviously by that sort of security plate or the gate that comes down. But tell us what you know, Evan.
Well, Brianna, at this point, this person is now in custody of the police, but he's also being evaluated at the hospital there. I think Ryan Young said it was in DeKalb County. And so that's the expectation now there. That evaluation is going to take some time. It will include a mental health evaluation. Again, there's a lot that is unexplained about this incident at this point. This person drove up to that what is an employee entrance for that complex where the FBI building is, or where the FBI field office is located, and tried to gain entry. They came out of the vehicle and tried to walk in to the complex. They were stopped by the FBI security people who help screen visitors to that complex. And so that's where this ended. At this point, again, from what we know, the person didn't make any statements, any threats. There was no expectation of a heightened threat at this FBI building. So it was certainly something of a surprise. And so what's going to happen next is, obviously he's being evaluated not only for any potential injuries, but also for potential mental health issues, because this is so unexplained at this point. As Ryan Young pointed out, there were no weapons found immediately, and the vehicle has been cleared. There's no bombs. So those are the first and immediate concerns when you have something like this. Those are the first and immediate concerns that the security folks, the FBI, tries to make sure is made clear. And so now the work continues to try to figure out what happened here, what prompted this person to go to this entrance and ram that vehicle into that barrier, the entry to the FBI field office just outside of Atlanta. Boris and Brianna.
Evan, please stand by. We want to bring in Josh Campbell. He's a CNN security correspondent, also a former FBI supervisory special agent. Josh, first, talk to us about the security measures that are in place around these kinds of buildings and obviously the protocol that goes into place when something like this happens. It worked in this case, apparently, as it was designed to.
Yeah, this is an effective security system, as you can see from the front of that Buick SUV there, smashed into what's called the final denial barrier. There are layered security approaches to these federal buildings. You obviously have the iron gates and then that system that's in place there to prevent what this person allegedly attempted to do, and that is to make entry into that building. What we've seen over the last couple years, we've talked about these threats that have manifested against FBI employees. We know that the FBI stood up its own individual cell, a unit, just to track threats against FBI personnel. So it's something that they certainly have been taking seriously. We know in August of 2022, there was an individual who attempted to breach the FBI field office there in Ohio. That then led to a standoff. That person was eventually killed. And so we know that the FBI Security Division, which is based at FBI headquarters but has personnel staged across the country, have been focused very heavily on security. We've also seen over the last couple of decades a move to get FBI field offices out of downtown areas and in more to a standalone type facility. And security obviously is paramount there. You want to have what's called standoff, where you're not on a busy roadway, where you can put these security processes that are in place. You go back to 1995, the Alpha P Murrah Federal Building bombing in Oklahoma City. That was really a wake-up call for the federal government about how to protect these facilities. And at certain field offices, to include there at FBI Atlanta, you have security personnel that work around the clock, but you can't also overlook the fact that we're talking about a building that houses federal agents. And so they obviously would respond very quickly. We see some of the FBI SWAT vehicles that were pulled up along the scene there to, just to ensure that this person didn't make further entry. We know that that person obviously now in custody. And then we move to the investigation to determine who this individual was. It appears from our affiliate coverage, it looks like that Buick has South Carolina plates. So unclear if this vehicle belonged to the individual, whether this was a rental car. And so there's that investigative process that's now in place to fully identify this person and then try to get to that motive. Was this some type of mental health episode? Was this someone who was specifically targeting personnel at that FBI facility? We don't yet know. We're obviously waiting for authorities to provide that type of information, but clearly a very serious incident that has happened here. And it's something, I talk to FBI employees all the time, specifically over the last couple years, really concerned about their own security. I talked to one agent who talked about, taking further precautions, even driving to work, doing a couple extra laps around the building just to put eyes on, to make sure that there aren't suspicious people that are in and around these buildings. So for people who work at this federal law enforcement agency, it's certainly a very sensitive time. Again, we don't know the motive, what happened right here yet, but just looking at those images, you can just see how this could have been very, very dangerous if there were any personnel that were in and around that building, guys.
Yeah, there's always questions, and we don't know the answers in this particular case, Josh. Is it a mental health episode? Is it ideology of some sort? Is it a combination of the two? But when these things happen, we have those questions because of what you mentioned with Cincinnati, and just because of how much the FBI has become politicized, both, in the wake of the Mar-a-Lago search, in the wake of the Hillary Clinton email server investigation. You had congressional testimony last year from some in the FBI or formerly of the FBI who'd had their security clearances revoked after they had either attended January 6th or had trafficked in conspiracy theories about it. And all of that, I wonder from your perspective, has that put the FBI really kind of on the map for a lot of people in a way that it wasn't before?
No, most certainly. I mean, specifically when we talk about a lot of the conspiracy theories about the FBI over the last several years, I mean, that is something that obviously is of very concern to personnel. I'll state at the outset, obviously, that if this ends up being a mental health incident, obviously the vast majority of people who struggle with mental health don't turn out to be violent. And so it's important to note that. But, when you have people that are on the receiving end, specifically online, social media, all of this vitriol, all of these conspiracy theories, I mean, you look at that individual back in 2022 in Cincinnati. This is someone who followed the FBI's search at Mar-a-Lago at the residence. And that person was essentially arming for some type of, quote, revolution, law enforcement sources had told us at the time. And so you can just see how when you have people that are out there consuming that type of information, and then they might be prone to actually act upon that with violence, that is something that law enforcement and indeed, federal and state and local security facilities across the country are having to guard against. It's also worth noting, Evan and I had reported about a DHS bulletin not long ago that came out, the Department of Homeland Security, that was warning state, federal, local law enforcement around the country to be on guard for potential political violence. They listed a number of different reasons why that could be the case, everything from action taking place around legislatures around the country, actions in the courts. They didn't specifically mention former President Donald Trump and his legal woes, but that was essentially signaling that you have people that because of what's happening there in that court system that might be might decide to act with violence, and then a host of other different reasons, and that spans the political spectrum. People who might be prone to act with violence, and so if you're a law enforcement agency, that is something that you're having to guard against. I'll state again, because I know people on social media who try to connect dots here. We don't know that this has anything to do with any type of political incident. We don't know yet that this was a mental health episode. Quite frankly, for FBI personnel on the scene, that's a second factor for them. The first is to to obviously render safe that vehicle, which we know has happened, to bring in the bomb technicians to make sure that aren't any type of explosives or weapons. But the investigation itself is going to be very important. One thing that I will question, and obviously we have a lot of questions, is as authorities go back and look at the CCTV footage that blankets these FBI facilities, they'll be looking for, was this someone who had come to this location before? Were they trying to surveil, do some type of reconnaissance? It's interesting to me that that first level barrier that you see, that iron fencing there, appears to be open. The person didn't crash into that. The person crashed into that final denial barrier, which recedes into the ground. And so was this someone who was waiting as an employee was entering to then try to piggyback and come in behind that individual? Or was this a gate that was just left open, which would obviously raise security issues? So a lot of questions that go into why this person was there, what the person was doing in the moments leading up to that. And then in this day and age, so many people are on social media, so once they fully identify this person, they'll want to try to determine whether there was any indication that this was about to happen. Again, to get to that motive, why the person decided that they wanted to do this. Final point I'll make is that the FBI, unlike other facilities such as the Department of Defense, such as the Central Intelligence Agency, they have to walk a fine line between being a secure facility but also a facility where members of the public can come in. When I was an FBI agent, all FBI agents have to sit what's called the duty agent. That happens a number of times a year depending on the size of the field office, and that is people that come in that want to report some type of crime or that they've been a victim. And so while there is security, there also has to be some type of welcoming approach, but that's something that they're always trying to calibrate, how to ensure that bad actors don't make their way in.